creatures, or who seem to possess objects of English origin. These reports are far from conclusive, but they keep the theory alive. More importantly, archaeology has begun to suggest that at least some colonists may indeed have moved and tried to survive elsewhere. One of the most important discoveries came from John White's own map, known as the Virginia Pars map. In 2012, researchers using modern imaging technology found evidence of a hidden symbol beneath a patch on the map, an apparent fort or relocation site, roughly 50 miles inland. That area, now often called Site X, became a major focus of investigation. And what did archaeologists find there? English artifacts, pottery, metal objects, items that should not have been there if no colonists had moved inland. That does not solve the mystery, but it changes it. It suggests that the lost colony may not have been completely lost in one moment. It may have relocated, adapted, broken apart, survived in fragments. And in some ways, that is even more haunting, because it raises the possibility that there was no single fate. Maybe one group went to Croatoan, maybe another headed inland. Maybe families were separated by necessity. Maybe some survived for years while others perished. The more realistic the story becomes, the more unsettling it feels. Mysteries are frightening, but partial survival can be even more disturbing than a clean ending. It means fear stretched over time. It means decisions made under pressure. It means suffering that did not happen in one violent burst, but in a slow and uncertain unraveling. Of course, not every theory ends in survival. Some historians believe the colony may have been wiped out after relocating. The region was unstable, and alliances among indigenous groups were complex. If the settlers attached themselves to one side of a conflict, they may have been caught in violence they barely understood. They may have arrived as guests and died as liabilities, or they may simply have wandered into a landscape too harsh for an already weakened group to endure. Then there is the Spanish theory, and this one feels terrifying because it fits the world of empires so well. Spain had every reason to watch English colonial efforts closely. Roanoke was not some hidden village in the woods. It was a political threat. If the Spanish discovered the colony's position, while White was trapped in England, they may have chosen to erase it. A swift military strike would have prevented England from gaining a valuable foothold on the Atlantic coast. It sounds dramatic, but this was the age of imperial sabotage, secret intelligence, and ruthless strategy. Nations did not hesitate to destroy weak outposts if it served a larger purpose. The problem is that, like so much in the Roanoke story, direct proof is missing. There is no final document that closes the case. No confession, no confirmed Spanish report announcing the colony's destruction. Still, the theory persists because Roanoke sits exactly where geopolitics and human vulnerability overlap. It was exposed not only to hunger and weather, but to the ambitions of empires. And then there are the Dare stones, perhaps the strangest chapter in the entire legend. Beginning in the 1930s, a series of stones surfaced bearing inscriptions supposedly written by Eleanor Dare, White's daughter. The carvings described suffering, death, disease, and massacre. They painted a grim image of a colony collapsing under unbearable pressure. Most experts today believe nearly all of these stones were hoaxes. The language and circumstances are deeply suspicious. But the first stone remains controversial. Some scholars argue it still deserves serious attention. If authentic, it would be one of the most heartbreaking messages in early American history. A daughter leaving behind a final account for the father who never reached her in time. Whether real or false, the emotional force of the Dare stones reveals something important. People are drawn to Roanoke because they cannot bear the silence. We want a final message. We want a voice from the dark. We want someone from that lost colony to speak and tell us what happened. But history does not always offer that mercy. Sometimes all it leaves is a fragment, a carving in wood, a suspicious stone, a hidden mark on a map, a broken trail in the dirt, and the rest becomes imagination pressed against evidence. That is why Roanoke still feels so modern, even now. At its heart, it is a story about the fragility of being remembered. We assume that great tragedies leave great records behind, but many do not. Sometimes entire lives vanish into weather, conflict, migration, and time. Sometimes history keeps the headline and loses the people. Think about the terror of that. 115 human beings stood on the edge of a continent unknown to them. They had names, fears, illnesses, arguments, hopes. They built shelters, they carried children, they waited for a ship. And then somehow, they slipped beyond certainty. Not legend, not myth, certainty. That is the true darkness of Roanoke. Not ghosts, not curses, not supernatural disappearances, just the brutal possibility that human beings can suffer, move, die, and be forgotten so completely that centuries later, all we can recover is one carved word and 1,000 theories. Even the land seems to conspire with the mystery. The Outer Banks are beautiful, but they are unstable places. Winds reshape them, storms tear them apart. Water swallows evidence, wood rots, campsites disappear, coastlines shift. If a people vanished there, nature would not preserve the scene for future investigators. It would erase it. And maybe that is why Roanoke has never stopped haunting historians, writers, archaeologists, and anyone who hears the story for the first time. It sits in the mind like an unfinished sentence. We feel that the answer must exist somewhere, under sand, in oral histories, in old records, in overlooked artifacts. But it never fully appears. The colony remains suspended between explanation and myth. Somewhere between relocation and death. Somewhere between history and legend. What happened on Roanoke Island after John White sailed away? Did the colonists leave calmly, believing rescue would come later? Did they split into desperate groups under pressure from famine? Did they find refuge among the Croatoan and slowly disappear into another culture? Did they move inland and struggle on for years? Did some survive while others were killed? Or did something happen that left so little behind that even archaeology can only whisper at it? We may never know. And perhaps that is why the story endures. Because Roanoke is not just about a vanished colony. It is about the fear of unanswered absence. It is about returning too late. It is about a message that explains almost nothing. It is about the unbearable idea that people can be close enough to touch in memory, but unreachable, in fact. A father returned for his daughter and granddaughter. He found an empty settlement, a carved word, and silence. More than 400 years later, that silence still has not ended. So the next time you hear the name Roanoke, do not think only of history books and old maps. Think of a shoreline at dusk. Think of a man stepping onto land with hope still alive in his chest. Think of that hope collapsing with every silent step between the abandoned houses. Think of the moment he sees the carving. Think of all the possibilities contained in that single word. Croatoan, a place, a clue, a final instruction, a desperate sign. Or maybe the last echo of a lost world that did not want to be found. And that is what makes Roanoke unforgettable. Not just that the colony vanished, but that it left behind just enough to keep us searching, and never enough to let us stop.